Hey, Kamaria.
Yay, we made it. Hey, Jen. Happy Thursday.
Yeah, and I want to go dive in because we're talking about managing underperformance, and we could probably talk about 3 hours about this. We will spare everyone that. But why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, it's so funny because as we always go through picking topics and we pick out the ones that jump out to us, I think underperformance is one that is near and dear to my heart for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, having led teams, we know the gravity of having to separate people from employment and having to say, this isn't a good fit for you. But two, lately there's been a lot of conversation about layoffs and layoffs that have been performance driven. We've heard Meta say that they've started doing them. We've heard other people. And, you know, it's a very interesting place to kind of start a conversation or to find yourself in the middle of a layoff and be like, surprise, you're an underperformer. And so you say to yourself, how do we get here, right? How do we get to we're doing layoffs and maybe they're not necessarily for the reason they're saying, but assuming they are, how do we get to a place of surprise you're being laid off and this is new news to you? Your last performance appraisal did not reflect that you were underperforming, and yet here you are. So for me, I always think about just is it fair and is it right? And so I think the best thing
Hmm.
we can do by people is to make sure that if there are signs of underperformance, that we are giving them the runway. I always say my team is team no surprises. And so I don't like for people to be like, surprise, you weren't doing the right job and now you're separated. So I really wanted to talk about this just to kind of help managers. Maybe you're not facing a layoff, but maybe there is somebody on your team that is struggling with underperformance and you're trying to figure out how to get them back on track. So that's where we are today.
Okay, so I've got so many things to say about this.
You're
Um,
primed and ready. Jump it.
Let's see if I can keep us on track. So, one is let's call BS on some of these performance reviews that are really just firing people. Team no
Yeah.
surprises, 100%. Like giving people feedback. Oh, you have low performance, you're being fired. That's not what well, let's separate that because I think that is just a way to lay people off that they have done to lay people off. And I don't that doesn't sound any better than just laying people off. It's even worse, right? Wouldn't you rather just be let go because the company is trying to save money than saying, hey, you're an underperformer when you just got a great
Yes.
review?
Yes.
I just call it what it is.
You call it what it is, but you know what? And as I was thinking about and sort of prepping for this call, out front we see like a mass layoff. But how many times have we been in a calibration conversation, or even how many times have we as people leaders been told that a layoff is coming and you need to figure out who it's going to be and you need to pick your low performer and you haven't communicated to somebody that it's them, right? And so I think even in that instance, there are times when we get to separation when maybe we haven't done our due diligence. And I'll tell you, like this started with me when I was thinking about a team that I was on, right? And we were having a conversation and we were doing ratings and someone said, this person, I think this person is, whatever the low rating was. And I had to stop and ask a question. I had to say, well, wait a minute. You're calling this person a low performer. I know this person. I've worked with this person. I don't see her as a low performer. So, like, what are we talking about here? And we went on to talk about the descriptions of what they were talking about. And then my next question was, well, what was she hired to do? Because I think one thing that we
Mhm.
love to do in organizations is be like, we hired you to do this, but now your job is this. And then we're like, and you're low performing, right? And so I said, well, what do we hire her to do? Because I agree, the thing that you just described, she's terrible at that. But if you interviewed her, you probably would have found that during her interview. So how did we get here? And I think that's such an important thing to talk about in performance because whether it's a layoff or whether it's a natural attrition, there's still so much due diligence that we have to do when we talk about like managing underperformance to figure out like why are they underperforming and is part of that our fault? How did we
Yeah.
get here?
That made me think of a couple things. One is these conversations, these calibration conversations are happening, and
Mm-hmm.
It happens a lot. I've seen it to where people protect their department, right? Their people. Oh no, they're great performers. And everyone's like, well, I've had a different experience with them. So I think it is important for people to realize that it's not just the managing up, it's making sure people see you doing what you're doing. It matters, even whether it's annoying or not. It's just part of the politics. So people are making those decisions, and you have to hopefully have someone vouch for you. I think that's a piece of it. But Kamaria, this made me think of my time in corporate. And I had to separate two people and then I outsourced. So that, going through those people, I was sitting there thinking, one of them is what you said. They were just a poor fit on hiring for the role. So, for example, that person loved data behind the scenes. That was that person's strength. They were client facing. It was a mismatch, right? So
Yeah.
that was probably the hardest person to let go because they were a great person. They tried hard. They were just in the wrong role for them by no fault of their own.
Yeah. I used to have a leader. I remember I took a job. I was there for 6 months. I always tell people I'm like the original job hopper. I was there for 6 months because I've moved into a role, and right when I moved into the role, my manager left. So I got a new manager. She was in another state. I was working in an offsite training facility. So I was basically just by myself in a place. I had an infant, and suddenly my travel picked up. And I was like, I can't do this, right? So I went to my manager and I said, listen, I think I'm leaving. And I explained to her the situation, right? I'm down here by myself with an infant. Now I have more travel. I have no support. And she said something to me that I have passed on to my teams, which is sometimes there is good fit, bad fit, and misfit. And good fit is like, we hired you, you're great, we're great, look at us, now we're being great together, right? Bad fit is one of us is not upholding our end of the bargain. As an organization, we're not doing what we need to do for you, and so you're unhappy. As an employee, you're not doing what you need to do for us, and so we're unhappy. That's a bad fit. And then it's misfit is like there's just nothing wrong with either one of us, but this is not working out, right? For a multitude of reasons. Right person, wrong seat. I think EOS uses that. Do you have the right people in the right
Mm-hmm.
seat? And I think it's so important that when we're talking about, separating people, when we talk about underperformance, that we do clarify misfit is not underperformance. Or if they are underperforming, why are they underperforming, right? So the category of underperformance in and of itself, I kind of treat that as neutral. But then I say to myself, well, why are they underperforming? If they're underperforming because it's a misfit, because you took a butterfly of a human being and then tried to make them a tactical person working with spreadsheets, they probably are underperforming, but that's not an issue that's inherent in them.
Right. Yeah, I love that series that you just went through. I think there's two things. There's the one that you have to manage somebody out, right? And I think there's this other piece that I've experienced, which is underperformers. Let's just say we'll categorize them, the people who you do need to coach a lot. I remember being in a leadership training, I think one of the few that I got back in the day. And one of the questions the trainer asked us was like, out of all your team, who should you put the most energy and time into? And of course, how your high performers, right? And good luck, right? So what I find a lot is you get bogged down with some of the underperformers because let's just say you're going through, you're assessing, what do they need? Do they have the skills, right? Can they fit in the job? Can I move them to a different job? Or I've had this situation to where it's a very inconsistent performance.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's someone that I inherited a team, and the other leader kind of said, oh, yeah, they're really inconsistent, but nothing was documented. It was kind of like, yeah, there's inconsistent. Right. And then I noticed it and it was like, hi, yeah, you're doing great. No, it was that. And that takes a lot of energy and effort and time to manage. So yes, I do believe we need to pour into our high performers. I do. But let's talk real talk is it takes a lot to manage an underperformer, an
It,
inconsistent performer, however you want to say it.
yeah, I mean, I think it does take a lot to manage them. I think that though, and this is the realities of it, right? Like, so I remember leading a session on performance management and talking to managers. and towing the HR line of saying, you should manage them out. And one looked me dead in my face, I talk about this all the time, and said, absolutely not, right? Because I am not going to get a requisition approved to replace this person, period. I know that, so I'm not doing it. So in that instance, your option is to spend the time, right? Like it's a pay me now, pay me later society. So either you're gonna manage that performance and get them to be a performer, or you're not going to have a person. Which one do you like? And I'm not saying you should always hang on to them, but make sure you've done everything you can to figure out why that performance is happening, right? That underperformance is happening. And that's why, like I said, as I was teasing this, I said, I always ask two questions. Is it a fish climbing a tree, or is it my son getting his first job? Because when I say, is it a fish climbing a tree? What I mean is, has this person ever been able to do the thing you've been asking them to do? Have you seen any level of transferable skill that leads you to believe that this person is capable? And I always start there with managers because, again, we inherit people, we inherit teams, we swap people's roles. So I'm always like, have you seen any inclination that this person can be successful? That's always the start of my conversation. And then I talk about, okay, so if you have seen this person be successful, when? Why? What happened? And also, what are some of the things that might be driving that underperformance? So I was facilitating a session for one of my clients, and we were talking about same thing, right? This person, they're underperforming, or this, or that. And I said to them, well, like, when does this happen? And they were able to start to pinpoint the actual places where they saw the underperformance. And I said, let's see if we can fix that. So I think like it is worth the effort to some people to try to do it. I think when people say like, let's manage them out, I think that is a viable option, but only after you figure it out that it's a bad fit, right? But then maybe if you haven't done everything you can do first, I think you owe it to them and you, because I mean, it's not even just the owing it to people to make sure that we're not separating them from employment, but there's just legitimate costs that go along with having to recruit new people, onboard new people, the downtime of you not having somebody in the role. So I like to lean towards, did we do everything we can before we're like, goodbye?
Right.
And we start over, because the other part is, if you hired this person and this was not a good fit, you're at a crapshoot now hiring a better person. So I think there's a little bit of investigative journalism that has to go on before we're like, you don't work here anymore.
Yeah, and I do think, okay, a few things here. I do think when working for a large organization, it is very helpful to say, maybe your talents don't align to this particular role, whether that's our fault or you're just mishired into it. It's our fault, right? Is there another place within the organization we can find you a spot? And I've been successful there, say, hey, we're in a big company. What can I do to connect you to other people? Because you are valuable to the organization. It's not fitting for this team. So I think that's one piece that is helpful. But I want to go back to two things you said. But one is, that is the thing that I think annoys, we'll say, HR the most. And I've seen it. All of a sudden, a manager just gets annoyed. We need to let them go, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of generalizations. And I think that is what I'd like to work with leaders to do. Okay, what you said, where have they been underperforming? What have you exactly seen? And going through it bit by bit, because sometimes they are generalizations. It's one thing. They haven't repeated it, but it's just kind of sitting in your head.
Yeah.
But a lot of teachers, they all of a sudden go to, this isn't going to work, instead of saying, let's actually sit and think through where they're not performing. And maybe you haven't even set the expectations of how they should show up that way. And then they're not performing. You're upset. No one's communicating. And all of a sudden you want to fire them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with you. I think that's frustrating for people because, a lot of times we fail to set the standard of what performance is supposed to be. So let's dissect the performance management process for a second. When we start talking about goals, I think everyone's like, let's make a SMART goal. And so it might be like, and it really depends on the kind of work that you do. But if you're doing L&D work, strategy work, goals are not always as cut and dry as we like to think that they are when you're doing something that's very technical and there's like this much output and this much this and this much that, right?
Sales, right?
Yeah,
Sales
like
goals.
sales so clear. And even with sales goals, like the output and the input can be, like those things are not always as cut and dry as we think they are. But like, so then we have these conversations and we're like, well, did you meet the standard? But the question is, did we actually set a standard? And I think that is an important question of when we start thinking about underperformance. The first question is, were we clear in what good performance looks like? Because there's good performance. I remember going to a conference and he said, when I'm evaluating performance, I ask myself, like, did this person do something that was an underperformance compared to what I know they could have done? Was it an underperformance due to the circumstance? Like what caused that underperformance? But did we even set a goal that made sense and was a stretch goal for that person? And were the goals an alignment to begin with? So I can think of lots of times when we created goals, the goals were not clear. The standard was not clear. And so then when we start off with an arbitrary standard, it's hard to then have a conversation to say, well, you didn't meet it. And it's so interesting because this happened with my son recently, where we were having a conversation. I am blessed with a child that has not needed a lot of like over management. Like his idea of being out late is like 11 o'clock. And I was like, when I was right.
Nice.
So like I never set a curfew for him. Right. And so like one night he came in like later than I would have liked. And he was like, well, but I don't have a curfew. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I never set a standard. So now I can't be mad and say you violated my standard because I never set it. And so I think even there's clarity in the performance management process of when I set a goal, I never say, and I ask you the same thing from your own experience. Have you ever had a conversation where in the beginning of the year you said, and this to me is what high, middle, and low performance will look like for the thing I've asked you to do? No,
there's no good, better, best. No,
there's no good, better, best, right? And then we get to the end of the year or we get to a point and we're like, well, you're under. And something that I started working on and saying like, do you really know what good, better, best looks like in performance as a manager? Do you know this? Did you articulate this? Did you create a performance standard? Or is it fluctuating as you're going? And now
I'll know it when I see it, Kamaria.
I'll know it when I see it. Is that real? Like, does it happen?
Oh, well, people say, I know it when I see it. I think that's what they do. I think when you get back, I love what you said about the goals, right? So are those even clear at the beginning? And then the process I've always been through in my life has been mid-year check-in and then end of year, right? So, I mean, think about how much can change in 6 months in any organization, right? And at the end, you're sitting there, and I remember as a manager going through, and you have biases, right? You have recency bias. We used to make a joke, okay, hey, everyone's doing performance reviews right now. You better do really good in December, right? Because that's what they're thinking about. And we all have that recency bias. You're only thinking of what happened in the past few weeks when you're rating people on the whole year. And so there is the recency bias. I've also seen it with leaders, and I'm sure I've done it too, the halo effect.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, or the devil, what is it called? It's the halo, and then it's something about
horns.
The devil, but I can't. Horns. Thank you. Horns. Halo and horns. And I've seen this with leaders that they have already have this bias against one of their people. So it doesn't matter what they do, they will never recover in that leader's eyes. So I think just the whole setup from the get-go does not lend itself to coaching conversations, clarity, expectations, and anyone being happy in the end.
No, and I think we have to be fair, right? Because I think about my corporate career where goal setting was an exercise only, right? Like because you knew that the goal would change. Not even mid-year, it could change 2 months from now. It could change by the end of the quarter, right? And so do we go back and revisit what is the standard? What are we thinking? What does it look like to perform in a fluid environment? We're always all, working through change. So to your point, by the time we get to December, we've had goals changes, we've got new goals, we've dropped goals, we've changed teams. So many things have happened. And did we go back and say, now this is the standard, right? And is it just the object? Is it how you did the work? What are the things that we're looking for? So I think there's a lot of subjectivity in how we're setting the standards. And I think that is a part of setting people up of not setting people up for success, because then you come back to them and say you've underperformed. And I remember having a conversation with somebody on my team because I inherited him and I was asked to put him on a PIP, on a performance improvement plan. Literally had just got him. All right. And I was like, wait, why do I have to do it? Like, I don't even know enough about him. And so as I started thinking about, okay, if I need to put you on a performance improvement plan, because that's what I've been asked to do. And to your point, it was one of those things where it wasn't necessarily even a series of events. It was, he had a big event with a senior person, right? With the senior people in the room, and they were like, "Oh no, he's got to get on a PIP." And so again, I think in one of the clips you showed earlier this week, that wasn't my choice, but here I was as the manager having to do it. So I said to myself, okay, well, I'm going to have to deal with this underperformance that has been identified. The first thing I'm going to do is try to understand, how we got here. So at the conversation, I said, listen, tell me about your role. Tell me, like, what are you supposed, as you understand it, what are you supposed to be doing? And he gave me, the rundown of what he thought he was supposed to be doing. And I said, okay, this is the feedback that I have heard that has been relayed to me, right? There's a lack of proactive insights, right? A data analyst, there's a lack of proactive insights, right? And you're in the room with senior leaders and they're expecting you to have digested it and can spit it at them, right? There's a lack of that. There is a lack of, just organization when you come to the meetings. You don't seem like you're prepared. So I gave him the whole, like, this is what's happening. And then I listened. And he said to me, listen, first, like, this project has been a windy project. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to be doing anymore. The instructions to me have been vague. They've been sort of like, go in the room and give them this data, but I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their outcomes are. And so again, this came from a place of like not feeling like he was set up for success. And as a result, his performance is struggling, but not because he didn't know, because there was a skill deficit. There was so much shifting around him and there was no guidance, right? So to turn that around, we put together a plan. If before you go into anybody's meeting, you come talk to me, because now I'm your manager. And we're going to make sure that you know what the takeaway is. If there's no clear takeaway, we're going to get it before you go into the room, right? And so then we start talking about like the conditions of success. And I think a lot of times when we are managing underperformance, we're under the impression that just giving them feedback is the answer. I'm going to tell you you're underperforming and you have to be different. But no, we had to have a serious conversation around, okay, I want you to make sure that So we're going to fix that problem, because that's not a you problem. That's an us problem.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to go, there's another data analytics team. I want you to go shadow with them. Is there somebody there that you're a friend with? And he's like, oh yeah, I know so-and-so. Okay, how are they running their meetings? What are they, what does good look like anyway? Because again, we don't know. There's no standard for this. And so I sent him to go find out what good looks like, because that's the other thing about performance. Sometimes people are underperforming because they don't know what good looks like. And it's not even in the goal setting of it. They've never seen it, right? So that was part of the conversation. And then there was let's check back in. Let's try these two things first. Let's see if we can nail those things down. And then let's see. And he, like, literally in 8 weeks, I was getting rave reviews. I don't know what you did, Kamaria. I didn't do anything but ask the right questions, figure out what the pain point was, figure out how we could solve for it. Because going back to, is it a fish climbing a tree? It wasn't. He'd been an excellent data analyst in the past. What happened?
Well, God, when you think about being a data analyst, going to present to senior leadership, completely different skill set. Anytime you're presenting to senior leadership, it's just, it raises the level of what they expect from you, and they're probably not going to be clear about what they need, which sounds like it happened.
They're not.
They're not, and they just want to go put them on a PIP, right? And I think that when you think about a PIP, you of course want it to be the last resort. You're not, but I always think of putting on a PIP with the hope they'll get off of it. with the hope that, okay, they know now, it's been clarified. Here's the expectations. Here's what you're not doing right. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the PIP. I want to help you I'm here to support you to get off this PIP. And I think it's like some people put them on the PIP just to be like, this is my way to firing because they never documented a thing. And now it's, I've got to start documenting. So I think it's like the whole mindset you go in with a PIP, and could it be more exploratory? It's something you said about setting you up for success. I was coaching a leader recently and I said, okay, well, how do you think you're being set up for success? Or how do you think you're setting your people up for success? And she's like, I don't think I am being set up for success. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay. Well, then that now it warrants a conversation with your leader, right? To say, what does good look like? What does great look like? And it, as a leader, I think if you can go in with the lens is, how am I setting people up for success to do their job well?
Yeah.
And going to one of the main, questions we wanted to talk about here is like, what is doing everything you can mean? Right? Because I think, I have a few lists of things. One, was it a good hiring fit? Again,
Mm-hmm.
are you expecting a fish to climb a tree from the
Mm-hmm.
very get go, or maybe their job changed? I was tasked to run a team and turn them into different job roles. Okay.
Right. Yes.
That okay, well, that means some of them aren't going to have the skills or need to be trained up for the skills, or maybe they need to stay in a different role. Do they have the skills to do the job? Have we laid out expectations, and not only laid out expectations, but manage to them? That's where those feedback conversations come in, right? Not
Yeah.
just one time. Are you managing to them? Do they have the tools and resources to do their job? Because sometimes it's just a tool. They don't have the support, the resources, etc. Um, and then documenting it. I think you do need to document, and I think you need to document on both fronts. Leaders document what you've talked to them about, what you're noticing, and what you've talked to them about, but also for employees to say, hey, here are some great things I've done. Because
Yeah.
knowing your manager is not going to remember what you did in January when you're getting rated that next March. Write it down. Make sure you keep that front and center to your manager as well. And I do feel like you do need to do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there is this limit to how much, because I have seen leaders try to save the people and it's just not a fit.
Yeah.
And you cannot kill yourself trying to save a person
No.
that cannot or doesn't want to be saved.
Yeah. So I think again, I go back to the second part of that question was, is it my son getting his first job? And that to me is underperformance that just needs support,
Mhm.
not it's a fish climbing a tree. Because I think when you go through the process, and I think this is why it's so important. I think people always think about documentation as like the legal reason why you should do something. I think about documentation because when I go to have that conversation, I also want to be able to say, this is what we've tried, right? This is what we've tried. One of my mantras is that a people leader should be an artist, a scientist, and a coach. And the scientist is like, we're gonna try an experiment. And I'm gonna time box the experiment. So I'm gonna say, again, we're gonna try this for 8 weeks and we're gonna see if it turns around. If it turns around, great. Do I see progress of it turning around? Okay, I might extend it past 8 weeks, but I'm going to time box it. Right? We're going to spend a whole year trying to
Mhm.
figure you back to performance, but I am going to run a series of experiments to figure out if we can get you to performance. Because I think when I say, have I done everything I can, I want to feel confident and be able to say that I, as a people leader, I did my due diligence by you. And I can have a conversation and say, listen, we tried this, 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 and this. And so, I was brought on to help someone who was struggling in an organization. So can you performance coach this person? This is what we're seeing, X, Y, and Z. And so we started off with, all right, walk me through, like, what's your day look like? Let me try to understand what's happening. And then with that, here are some gaps that we see. What if we tried this tool? So I anyone who knows me knows I am a loudly proclaimed ADD butterfly. So what does that mean? I can forget things.
Mhm.
There might be things missing. I know this about myself, right? And so I saw some of the same characteristics in this person where I was like, okay, what support structures can we put in place to help you? So let's use, we have these wonderful AI note takers. Let's use that because it will give you a to-do list at the end. You don't even have to remember it as you're having these conversations. It'll spit out what happens next. Okay, that's one accommodation that we've tried. Okay, now let's maybe try breaking the work up into chunks. Let's figure out like what happens if we, 'cause I know there's a lot of multitasking. Let's figure out if we, break it into chunks, what happens. So we went through a series of experiments to try to see if we could turn around the performance. And we tried it for, let's say, a 3-month period, and we could not. And so in that instance, we went back to, this is a fish climbing a tree. But we can say that with confidence now. And that's I think the scientist me, because I'm an IO psychologist, right? It's, can you say with confidence that you have made the effort to improve this performance? And can you tell the story? Because then when you're having to have a separation conversation, it sounds different. Now you're saying, so listen, we've been working together for however long, right? Our goal was to do this. This is what we tried, right? This is where we landed. This feels like this might not be a good fit for you. So now we've come full circle back to good fit, bad fit, misfit. This is not a good fit for you. We've tried it, right? And now you're having a misfit conversation, which sounds different from you're a failure.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think we have to get down to the baseline understanding that everybody comes to work wanting to do a good job.
Yeah.
No one, no one's going in going, I really want to do a crap job today. Maybe they come up, some days you don't feel 100%. I get that. But most of us want to feel successful, right? So I think it's also, I always talk about mindset shifts, right? How can you go in there going, this person really wants to be successful? Again, I love that you're a scientist. How do we go try some experiments? How are we curious about what's really going on? And I've seen it a lot with new leaders, is that they get really frustrated with their performance, but instead of coaching them, getting them ready for it, even letting them lightly fail, right? They take it over, lightly fail. I'm not talking about big failure.
Yeah.
They just do it and they take over, and they don't give that person a chance to learn and grow. And because you learn from failure, you learn from, oh, that didn't go well. The poor senior leadership meeting. Okay, well, what happened? How can we fix it? How can we make it better going forward? So it is letting them also try some things with the support, with the resources, and seeing if they can do better. Because I'm sure if you're putting someone a PIP, they want to do better. They want to feel supported. I think so if we can go into the mindset shift on that, but also you said something about effort. So I'm going to go back to that conversation with the manager you were training. And she's like, well, if I can't fill this position, I am just going to keep on keeping on. I would never do that. That's just my personality. And let me just say, because the effort it takes, and whenever I've had to go through the performance improvement process, for me, it's always been like, this is really hard. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of effort. But I know at the end of this, the person's either going to be successful or they're going to go somewhere else. But either way, the team is going to be better off as a whole, because most teams I've worked with and on, the person that is not delivering in the same amount or the same quality as other team members. So to me, I would rather protect the other team members. And honestly, the effort it takes to manage an inconsistent or underperformer who's truly underperforming, right? It's like someone who's truly underperforming. I would rather have one less position, but that is a personal preference.
Well, so whenever I share that story, I always get mixed responses because people are like, no, it's your responsibility. And I get that, right? And I always say that conversation was a gift, because I would rather a manager say that to my face then not say it to my face and do it anyway. Because when you have information, then you can make a decision, right? And when you have information, then you can do something different. And so you get into the conversation of like, okay, well, listen, if you're not gonna do it, if you're not gonna manage that person out, which, listen, it's your team.
That's your choice. Yeah.
That's your choice. That turns into, we need to have more of a performance improvement conversation, right? So we never advocate for leave them there. It's okay, you've said they're there. Now let's talk about what you have done to get them out of that space. And have you done anything, right? And that turns into a different conversation for the manager, because if the fear is, I have this much work that has to get done. I have 5 people. I know this person may be doing not all the work, but they're doing some of the work. If I get rid of this person, now I have 4 people doing the work, right? I don't even have that extra 10% being done by that person. So the reason why I always bring that up is because it's a very real conversation that I've had with several people leaders. That is a friction point to performance management. It's not swap them out, bring a person in. I think that's a very important conversation point when we start talking about performance management. It's happened to me a couple of times where I have had to downsize or let someone go and thought I was going to replace them. And they were like, no, that's not a thing. And so I say that because I would rather know what the friction point is and help a manager through it than them not say it to me and not be able to help them through it, right? So we had a very intensive conversation around, okay, well, if you're going to keep this person, that's your choice, then we need to get a very intensive turnaround plan in place, right? Let's talk about what you try. Let's talk about what you should be trying, and let's try to bring this person's performance up. So it's not a conversation of just like leaving them there, but what I always appreciate about people leaders or anybody is when they are candid about why they're not going to do what I've asked of them, because now I know what problem we need to solve. So that's why
100%.
I love that gift. But I think the other part for me too is we also have to be mindful to want what we say we want. And by that, I mean, realistically speaking, most teams aren't full of high performers.
No. We just had that culture research that said you cannot be a high performer every year. Like, most people aren't. You can't always be high performers, right? It's just not possible from a sustainability perspective
and a compensation perspective. Let's call a spade a spade here. You can't. Listen, we rely on, and this is why, again, I love our chats, because we call it like we see it, right? And I think a lot of times we miss the contextual pieces that come along with being a people leader, which is, if I had a team full of just high performers, I would need to compensate them for that. When, I don't know about you, but I've got my bonus budget and been like, oh goodness, I have to tell somebody they're getting 1%.
Oh yeah, I've been told you can only have this many 4s. You really can't have any 5s. That's for the special person of the department, right? No, you're given your budget, or you're given here's what you have, right? Here are the numbers you have.
Here's the numbers you have. And so sometimes if someone's gonna be like, no, Kamaria, sometimes that low performance is a gift because someone's got to get 1%. That's legit what it is. And so I think that there's so much context to managing low performance. And the other thing is that, that you mentioned that made me think of an episode of my podcast where the guest was talking about being in the development zone versus being in the performance zone. And you said, is this person, they have to be able to fail. They need a little bit of space. They need to grow. The other part of it, of looking at a goal, is not just the goal and its object, like the object of the goal itself, but does that goal represent that person's performance zone or that person's stretch zone? So if I am someone, if someone is going to a new role, I would expect in role in year 1 or the first 6 months, they're probably going to be an underperformer, right? If they're getting a new role and they're stretching, they're going to be an underperformer because there is a maturity to task performance. So
I wouldn't consider them an underperformer if they're just trying to get they're in the development zone, right? They're trying to get up to speed.
It's a mess. So I consider underperformer to be a neutral word.
Do you?
I do.
Why?
I do. It's funny. I designed the training around this and we went back and forth and they were just like, you can't say that. I'm like, yes, I can. It's true. Like if this is the standard and you're under it, you're an underperformer. It's a neutral word. But the world, now I wouldn't put that on now obviously when we have a performance management process, we may use like a different word. But when I'm thinking about performance, I'm asking myself, do I think this person is performing to the standard? It's a yes or no question for me. And if they're not, then my question is, well, why not? If they're not performing to the standard, sometimes it's something in them, but sometimes it's the situation. So I ask myself, is what I'm seeing situational or is it characteristic? I ask myself a lot of questions you probably could see. I ask myself, is it situational or is it characteristic? If it's situational, well, then we can fix that, right? Because that means you now have taken on a new role. You're underperforming. You are you're doing something that's in your development zone. You might be underperforming, and that's okay. Like when I had a new fresh out of college intern, right? Performance looks like I need you to be able to go into this room with senior leaders, and I need you to, not an intern, but like a new hire, I need you to be able to scope their development needs and come back to me and tell me X, Y, and Z. Now, that's full performance. Anything under that is not full performance. But if you're brand new to my team, brand new to the organization, brand new to the workforce, it's silly for me to think that you're going to be a full performer. Right. So underperformance. But it's the nuances in how you talk about it and how you help them. But it's still, to me, neutrally underperformance. I think people are like, no, it's a word, but
yeah, I'm feeling some kind of way about that.
I know, I see it on your face.
I know. I'm like, I don't like it. So when I think of underperformance, yeah, I do, because I just feel a negative connotation when I think about it, right? I think about it for me personally. Do I ever want to be an underperformer? No, but there is this developmental piece that I'm doing stuff all the time that I'm not good at because I'm learning and grow. Like anytime you're growing, you're going to try something new. You're going to suck at it at first, and that's just how it is. But it's still what I'm equating in my mind with underperformance is not trying, right? In my mind, I'm linking those two. So I think anytime you are trying, there's something that I'm equating with effort.
I see what you're brain working through it.
You know, I am. I'm just like, because as long as you are trying, I feel like that is, I don't know. Underperforming, I can't get behind it being neutral.
Here's the thing, right? I'm an underperformer in lots of things in life. If you give me a spreadsheet and you're like, Kamaria, you're going to manage the spreadsheet, I'm going to underperform. That is not my jam. It's not my strength in life. That's okay. It's okay. If you, oh my gosh, if you're like, we're going to move you to the accounting department, we would be broke. Numbers, I am a word girl. I'm going to underperform, and that's okay. Because I think part of the conversation around underperformance, and I think you said, we started off with people want to be good at work. My philosophy with underperformance is everybody is good at something.
Yeah.
And they're good at something that's going to energize them. So when I see underperformance, I see you're not good at something, or you're not good at something that energizes you. It's okay. It's not being an underperformer. I think we have weighted the words to basically mean like you're unworthy, or you don't want to do it, or it's you're not motivated. But underperformance is simply you're not meeting the standard, right? Now that's not the whole conversation, but it is the conversation. Kamaria, you are not me. I remember I used to work at AOL, right? I used to work for call centers a lot when I was in college. Again, being the ADD butterfly that I am, punctuality is not my jam. Okay? It's not what I do. You say be there at 8. For some reason, I do a magical time thing where I'm just not going to get there before 8:15. I remember, right? So they tell you, Kamaria, listen, this is the standard, right? Be here at 8 o'clock. I can't do it. What ends up being, I got fired. They were like, listen, sis, this is not working out. We told you. This is not your ministry. Go do something else with your life. Guess what I did? I went and got another job that did not require a hard start time. That's okay. Like if we take all of this in as information, sometimes the conversation about separation is about redirecting people. Having people on your team that you're like, listen, this is not your jam, right? And as evidenced by We tried this, we tried this, we tried that. Is there something else you think we could try to get you to the standard, right? It's an engaging conversation. But when you get to it's a fish climbing a tree or it is a misfit, that is not a conversation of fault. It's a conversation of redirection to redirect them to something else that's going to be best for them. And that may not be in the organization. And that's
But
okay.
that is the toughest thing. I am working with the team on this right now. The person got hired into a leadership role. The org did not do their due diligence on where they truly, and we do it all. We talked about this before. We hire leaders or we promote leaders who are high performers, not that they're good leaders. And this person got hired for a leadership role. Shocker, they're not a good leader. But they didn't do their due diligence. They were in a hurry to hire. They hire this person. And it's, kind of, we're working on it. You got to give someone a chance to be able to, rise up to the expectations. But the hardest thing is if they have to be redirected to another role, you can't always, when you're a manager, you can't always say, well, this is their strength, so they're only going to work on their strengths, right? We're going to try to put them, that role doesn't exist. The role is the role. It can, and if you can be creative and go, okay, let me reconfigure the team to make sure everyone's in their strengths. When it's possible, it's a beautiful thing. But when you think about the situation that I'm working with now, they were hired. They were just the wrong hire.
Yeah.
Now, do they have the ability? You need to give this person time, support to see if they can, get to those expectations that probably have not been stated well in the first place. So there needs to be time to say, how are we going to support this person? Are they willing? Do they see it? Can they work and get there? But at the end of it, it would be such a hard situation to be in to, I'll just say, redirect them to, but it's not going to be on the team. You know what I mean? So
it's okay for it to not be on the team. So for example, I was coaching someone literally who's an executive at a nonprofit, and we were talking about people leadership. And the more we had conversations, she came to the realization that she did not like people leading. Right. And by the end of our coaching engagement, she made the choice to go to her manager and ask for a different role. And again, part of that conversation is the acknowledgement of underperforming as a people leader. And it's okay, right, to have the conversations. And we, again, we ran many experiments. We gave her tools to go use, things to go do. And we came full circle back to, this is not my jam. And that's a fair conversation. I think what ends up happening with people, and there's a part of work where we're afraid to tell people that, like, this isn't for you. And we also wait until we don't do enough investigation. We don't have enough curiosity to figure out what someone is good at. So, I think about someone on my team who I inherited, and I realized that she was not. She was decent. I wouldn't even call her a full-on underperformer. I'd say she was decent at what I asked her to do, but it took a little bit of work to get her to do it. I noticed she had another talent. I noticed that there was something else that she was really good at. And there was a space for that on our team, but not 100%. So we were like, okay, this is not a full-time role. And she's really great at this. This isn't the full-time role. But before we get to sort of like, you're fired, there's a series of conversations that have to happen. So first and foremost, is this your jam, sis? Like, do you like doing this? And because I think the other thing that we don't always talk about is that sometimes we do have jobs of things that we can do. It doesn't mean we like doing them. As a psychologist, like, I am good at building assessments. I hated doing it because people always grieved them. I was like, no, thank you to this. I want out of this, right? And so I was like, there's something else I want to do. So she had something else that she was really good at. And I started asking her questions like, out of curiosity, why are you doing this and not that? Help me understand, like, this seems to light you up. You do it really well. You do it without being asked. Like, when we ask you to do this part of your job, you are on it. Why not more of that? Right? And so we had those conversations about, hey, I applied for this role, this happened. I applied for this role, that happened. I said, okay, let's figure out how to get you, again, a larger organization, to there are full-time roles that do this thing. Let's move you there. Let's figure out how to get you over there. But even with that being said, if we can't move you over there as your manager, I'm letting you know, if you want to look externally for this type of role, that's okay too. I'm not going to push you off the boat, but I might say, have you considered looking for those types of roles? And I think that for me goes back to, that's part of doing all you can do, right? Because as a manager, you're always trying to find the right fit. Like, you're trying to find the win-win situation. And so that can mean, the win-win means I win as an organization because I don't have you here with me doing something you don't like to do. You win because now you have found something that is your strength and your skill set that you love doing. And I gave you space to do that. Right. So it's not running up to the cliff and saying you're fired, but it's starting to notice and say, and this is where the coaching comes in that we hope that managers learn how to do, to say, I notice when you do this type of work, it's not that great. I notice when you do this type of work, it's better. So it's a full conversation. It's a full progression. It's not just a set of steps. It is thinking about, if they're underperforming, there's a reason. If it's a fish climbing a tree, let's get them on the right tree, or let's get them in the ocean. All right. And how do you have that conversation?
Yeah. And I think if you can be that manager who can coach and say, I've noticed this about you. I've noticed you really just light up when you're doing this. And it doesn't seem like you get to do that much in that role. Have you considered X, Y, and Z? Have you considered looking at other places? And it almost, if you can have that kind of relationship with your people, it is such a, light bulbs go on. Maybe they haven't thought of it. And it's almost like you're giving them permission. It's okay to leave, right? Because some people are like, oh my God, I can't tell you that I'm not really happy here. That we just want you to flourish and feel good and help the organization in maybe a different capacity. But there's one question I'm just thinking of. You said, do you like doing this? And I think some people, out of self-preservation, if you don't have that relationship, will be like, oh yeah, sure. I do. So I think because they think they do, or maybe they haven't thought about it, or maybe they're scared to say no. I'm thinking of this specific person in my mind. I think that they will say yes because it's an ego thing and they don't want to be out of a leadership role. So I think if you have that relationship with your people to say, what do you enjoy? Maybe what are you enjoying about your role?
I was going to say, that's a different question, right? Like, what do you enjoy about this role? It's different from, do you enjoy this role? Mm-hmm. Because if they can tell you what they enjoy about the role, then okay, maybe there's something there. But do you enjoy the role? Or there's so many different ways you'd ask that, right? Like, what part of your job would you do for free? Because there's parts of my job that literally I would pay you to let me do it.
Yeah.
And there's parts of my job you couldn't pay me enough to do. So I think there's ways to do it. But I think what ends up happening is, and I think you hit the nail on the head with this, is that we treat managing underperformance like it's this transactional thing that we have to do, when really it's a natural part of overall performance management and knowing people enough. Because I always, I love a good turnaround story. I feel like if you can get in there and you can understand what's happening, then you can determine what you need to do about it. And then you can say, I try to make sure that conversations are neutral. And so when I come to somebody and I say, this is a mismatch, that's also preserving their self-worth in the conversation. It is preserving the relationship, but still getting the outcome that I need, which is either turning it around or separating them, but in a way that helps them also leave with some direction. So if this is not a good fit, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to surprise you with it's not a good fit, right? There's going to be a lot of runway of me being like, I noticed this.
Yeah. And I think and I think you go back to the where we started. The cardinal rule of performance reviews, performance management, is there should be no surprises. It should be one day you're going to be fired. It shouldn't be one day you're really underperforming, even if you consider that neutral. Kamaria, I still can't get behind that.
I still can't get behind that.
Yeah, I can't. But maybe I'll get there. Maybe I just need time to let it sit and process it, and give just caring about the people and saying, we're trying to get everyone into roles that will be the best fit if possible. But if anything else, that we're going to move the team forward, we're going to move the organization forward. And that takes getting to know your people, right? And having conversations with them. But I think too, they just, no surprises. Don't wait 6 months before you're giving some kind of, hey, here's how I think you're doing. How do you think you're doing? That just don't save it for the way that I've had performance management in organizations does not lend itself to regular, meaningful conversations. And I think it is part of your job as a manager to continue keeping that an open dialogue. And not just, hey, one time I'm going to give you feedback, right? No, it's a continual conversation. How do you think you're doing? Here's my thought, blah, blah, blah. A conversation.
I think that feedback is the performance improvement plan. Because I think that if I had to pinpoint a place, where I think a lot of managers fall down, it's, well, I gave them feedback. I think, have you heard that from the managers you work with, right? They'll say, well, I gave them feedback. And I'm like, well, that's great. That's not a plan. That's a conversation, but that's where they are. So I think part of it too is thinking that like the continued giving of feedback is the plan, and it's not. And so I think what I have heard is from managers is that they'll say, well, I gave them feedback. Well, no, I gave them feedback. And okay, well, what else did you do? Because giving feedback is a tactic for performance improvement. It is not the only tactic. Yeah. And so that's, I think, where if I were landing the plane, as you say, I would say, make sure that you're not thinking that managing underperformance is that I gave them feedback is your plan, because that's going to evoke a different conversation for me as your coach.
Yes. Yeah. And let me just say that a lot of times there's someone I'm thinking of in particular, they were talking about, here are 3 things this person needs to work on as their boss, right? Higher up. And I was like, have you told them that? Yeah, I told them. But after working with this person for a while, I was like, I don't think you're clear at all. Like, what did that person hear? Right. So you may say, I agree, feedback is not the performance plan. But I think a lot of times, A, it's not given, and B, they're not hearing it. They're not giving it in a way that the person's walking away going, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do. Yes. And I think that's a whole different conversation there.
Sorry, I was going to say, that is my son getting his first job, right? And so I always tell people, like, really quickly, when my son was, 15 and a half, I was like, go get a job, right? And that was my directive. I started working at 15. I walked through the malls. So I was like, go get a job. Now, mind you, I am, older than he is. And so when I got a job, we were still filling out paper applications. And so with him getting a job, now he has to learn how to navigate Workday, applicant tracking system. You can't just walk into a place and ask to speak to the manager anymore. They're all like, go to the website. The process has changed. So even though I gave him you need to go get a job, I was not clear about steps. I did not have a view of what it takes to get a job at this age. Because again, it was different when I did it 20 years ago or whatever, right? And so there's yes, you told them. But again, I had to then be like, wait, maybe I need to show him how to navigate Workday. Because what does he know about that at 15? And I think that's the part of the plan that sometimes gets missed, is that we feel like because we told them that was the plan, and yes, they agreed to the outcome, that does not mean they know the path to where they're going.
No, absolutely not. I mean, being very clear, having a clear plan. Let's see, what else did we say? Is it a fish trying to climb a tree, or is it your son getting your first job? Like, just distinguishing between, have we even put this person in a really hard position where they can't be successful, or do they just need to be coached up and trained up, and we've forgotten? I think that's a lot of a leader mindset, is that we're in our curse of the knowledge. It's easy, I'll do it, right? So easy, they can just do it. But we don't think that we need to go take them through the ATS, right? Or take them through how to navigate this thing, because we can do it like that.
It's so intuitive to us now.
Right. So I think, I know you landed the plane, and I think I think if anyone could think, like, one thing to take away is no surprises, right? Nothing should be a surprise.
Team no surprises. Not at a layoff, not end of your conversation. Team no surprises. But the other thing I want to add to that too, like there's two things. One, team, no surprises. Two, agree on the standard. I think a lot of this is not specific to underperformance, and maybe we'll have a whole other conversation about year-end conversations and the mismatch. But a lot of times, the other issue is that because there was no standard, I thought I was doing a great job. Now you're telling me that I'm not, and we have to find a way to meet in the middle. So I think that's what my takeaway is. Make sure there's clarity on the standard, that both people know going in what good looks like, because if not, now you've got subjectivity in the conversation, and nobody likes that.
And don't move it mid-year and not tell them, which has happened to me. I had goalpost. I'm a go-getter. I get it without telling me until performance review, right? Hey, oh yeah, no,
Oh,
that's not it. Let's move it further away. So yeah, don't move the goalposts
I
without
think we
telling
could do a
anyone.
whole another hour on performance faux pas. We should just write that down, because you have a list in your spirit, I can hear it, and I got a list in my spirit, I can hear it. So we're going to talk about some of the faux pas of managing performance. How about that?
Yes, okay, and the ones I've done too. Because I've done them. I've done them. All right, that'll be our next one. Performance management faux pas. All right, plane landed. We good?
Till next time.